Hello, welcome to Garden Chatter, where we connect gardeners, bloggers, and experts so that we can all grow and learn. Tonight we have a great show. We have two fabulous guests on, and we'll meet them in a moment. We'll be talking about garden tourism in Washington, D.C. And I am happy that my co-host Bren is able to make it. She was traveling today, and there's a little bit of question whether she was going to make it to her hotel room and get all set up. So Bren's going to show us how you can join the conversation live so you can contribute, and then she'll introduce our guests. So Bren.
Awesome.
Well,
first of all, I'm very thankful to be here. We had some engine issues up in Detroit on my airplane. So I'm happy to see you guys. And anyhow, so first of all, I want to explain to our viewers, if you're watching this, on the Google Hangout link, you can click right up in the right corner there. You'll see a grid, and click on the grid. You'll see a Q&A. Just click it again, and you'll have a nice little box that shows up on the right-hand side. And we'd love it if you said hi to our guests, or possibly ask some questions later on in this presentation. You can also follow us on #GardenChatter. So I will be watching that tonight on Twitter and Facebook. So just submitting your questions there. And I'm really excited to have two awesome gardeners with me. I'm excited to hear about Washington, D.C., because I've always wanted to come down and see your gardens down there, girls. So we have Kathy Jenks from WashingtonGardener.com, and Susan Harris of DCGarden.com. How about, can you guys take turns, maybe tell us what a hardiness zone is Washington, D.C. for us northern gardeners?
So it's zone 7 mainly, with a touch of zone 8. That's usually Capitol Hill, Georgetown, and the Alexandria waterfront. And then in the farther counties and mountains, which mountain for those in the west is basically a hill, some of them would be zone 6, depending on what side of the hill you are.
Now, Kathy, you mentioned that there was a record low last night. Do you think that's going to be doing some pretty major damage to some of the gardens, or?
I think after last winter and this winter, those of us who consider ourselves zone pushers or who are trying out different tropicals that might be zone 8, 9, definitely learned some lessons.
So maybe the damage was already done last year. So
yeah, last winter was pretty harsh. That it went down into the freezing zone and just stayed there, and that harmed our figs, our camellias, and some of the other borderline plants that for the last, I guess, 2 decades we've been pretty complacent about.
So we're going to be talking about your garden tourism in Washington, D.C., and the website that you're setting up. I thought maybe before we jump into that, could you just tell us a little bit about yourselves and how did you come about getting to this point where you're going to be setting up this website? Susan, do you want to go ahead and tell a little bit about what you're up to?
Sure. I was a volunteer in the gardens, and I went to they brought this speaker, this expert in garden tourism, down to talk to us, Richard Benfield from Connecticut, and the Smithsonian did. And after we were brainstorming and all complaining about how our gardens are just so under marketed and basically unknown to locals and visitors alike. And so this idea just sprang forth for after that Smithsonian talk. And so I started photographing a bunch of the gardens every month. We decided that that if we did it by month, people could see that even after spring, that our gardens are. In fact, a lot of people prefer the gardens in the late summer and the fall. So we're collecting our photos by month, and then we thought that would be the most helpful for visitors.
How about you, Kathy? What sort of brought you along to the road where you are now taking this on?
Well, like Susan, I attended the same talk and was inspired by Richard Benfield's descriptions of public gardens and how a lot of our public is not taking advantage of them. But also in the magazine I edit, Washington Gardener, every issue we do a day trip article which focuses on a different local public garden, and it's amazing how many people have said to me after one of those articles that I never knew that garden existed, and to me it's something I've been to, you know, several times a year all the time. So I'm just shocked that even the most diehard gardeners who've lived in the area for decades still don't know about these gardens.
So what's kind of the goal with your Washington D.C. Gardens website that you're setting up? Can you kind of outline what some of the things you're going to have on there and what people can find there?
Well, it's called dcgardens.com, and what the focus is collecting photos of all the gardens by month, and then there are pages for each garden. So if you went to like the Botanic Garden, you could see what it looked like every month of the season, and what else. And then we decided that for our local people, we wanted the website to also be a hub of very useful information, like where to learn to garden, both online and in person, or how to find a native plant society or a garden club, or even how to find plants, how to find a garden designer. So we're hoping, and then a calendar of major events. So we're hoping that it'll also draw a lot of people who live in this area to the website, and it actually is then a service to local gardeners. Oh, and then I should say, and then starting next month, there will be an e-blast or like a MailChimp type newsletter going out to people who subscribe, and it'll say, okay, here's the major garden events next month in our area, and here's what the gardens are going to look like. And so just very simple with the focus on potential visitors. So even people who live here, they're looking for a nice day out with the family, or their mother's coming to visit. So they would have a reference to see what to do that might be nice for visitors.
That sounds great. Kathy, did you want to? Oh, Bren, did you want to add?
This is pretty cool. I'm trying to. So I've visited both your websites before, of course. I love the gardens you're sharing, and I think you're doing an awesome thing, because I know in my area it's really hard to find gardens, public and private, even public ones. I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, how do you go about? I mean, how do you find all these gardens? You know what I mean? I mean, do you just, you know, walking the streets, or you know, how do you do that? That sounds funny. Do you put posters up or something, or, you know, because not everybody attends garden clubs and things like that. You know, so how would people find you, or give us an idea how we could do this in our area?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I wrote about this recently on gardenrant.com, which is a blog. And so many people commented on the blog, or also in individual emails to me, to ask that very question, Bren, is how can we get this in our area?
Yeah.
So actually, so if you go on the website, and at the top, if you click on the About link, one of the pages there is called Other Cities. And so what we're trying to do, because we really want to help other areas, states, cities, or regions, do what we're doing, or whatever works best for them. So you can see there a lot of different tips and how other regions and cities are doing it and how they're financing it. And so hopefully we'll get more and more information up there. And also the American Public Garden Association is helping to compile this information. So it might be, in fact, I'm encouraging that areas, maybe the simplest thing to do is for a garden, let's say a garden blogger in a region might initiate something like this, and then get funding for it from their tourism board, or whatever. There are various sources of funding. But a garden blogger or some garden photographers could initiate this, and hopefully actually get paid to do it. And it's a very cost-efficient media campaign. And I do hope that other areas will get on board and hire some people like Kathy Jensen and or the equivalent where they are to help make it happen.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that on the event page, Jan Johnson had mentioned that she's doing this in New York, in her county, and that she is working with the county tourism director and developing a brochure aimed at garden tourism. So just wanted to pop that in there because she had mentioned that. So Kathy, what is... Oh, go ahead.
Adam, I just have to know, I mean, just between us, so because I'm traveling, I can't see if there's questions on the Google Hangout, so can you kind of watch that?
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
I was just wondering, Kathy, what's your role going to be in this? Because you're going to have an active role. So what are some of the things you're going to be doing to keep this moving?
Yeah, so I'll be doing the monthly e-blast that Susan mentioned. So gathering local events and information on the local gardens and blasting that out to people. And beyond that, we wanted to go not just online, but to reach offline as well. So I'll be at local gardening events like the Leesburg Flower and Garden Festival and have brochures for our local public gardens and information to hand out. And I'm even thinking of doing some meetups or tweetups, so having those, like say once a month or every 2 weeks, and I could just say, local gardeners, let's meet up at the U.S. Botanic Garden to look at their orchids, bring your cameras, and we could do a live tweet from that. So I thought that would be a lot of fun. Something free and easy, no pressure, nobody has to sign up in advance. Who shows up is who shows up, and I think we'll actually get a really good crowd.
Okay, so if people want to follow that and find out more information about that, what's the easiest way? Like, is the website, or are you using the hashtag, or?
Yeah, I think the dcgarden.com website, dcgardens.com, would be the best, and to sign up for the e-blast, because all those events and everything would be mentioned in the e-blast. I do use the hashtag GardenDC, so they'll want to follow that hashtag as well for information on upcoming events and live gatherings.
You guys you should do like a special like Instagram thing for your cherry blossoms are coming. Mm-hmm. Maybe do like some little, teasers, like here comes, and show a bloom start,
Yeah, there's the Cherry Blossom Festival does a really good job of publicizing that coming out, and to the extent that anything that's in bloom in the city during those 2 weeks at the end of March, beginning of April, people will say, look at those gorgeous cherry blossoms. And I'm like, that's a saucer magnolia. That's an apricot. So,
that would be me.
Yeah. but all publicity is good publicity, I would say. But yeah, it does center it beyond those 2 weeks of gorgeous blooms. There's tons to see in the Washington D.C. area, so that's the message we want to get out to people. And there used to be, and I'd like to revive, there was a crabapple festival in the city, so crabapple blossom festival, and the U.S. National Arboretum, who is involved with breeding tons of the crepe myrtles that we have throughout all our southern gardens, has been wanting to start a crepe myrtle festival in July every year. So I think that's something that we could really help facilitate and get people excited about as well. And I mean, what else are you going to do on a hot, humid July, August day as a tourist in DC, but hide inside museums, come out and see the crepe myrtles, and also the water lily festival that takes place every year at Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens, which is part of a national park, actually, on the Anacostia River. And it's free and open to everybody, but even people in DC don't know about the water lily festival.
Really?
Well, and I'd like to add a couple of things that are different here. One is that we're so lucky that we have all these large gardens that are absolutely free to get in. I'm sure you've all been to gardens in cities that cost $20, $25 to get in. So we're so lucky that ours are free. But they also don't have budgeting much of or any marketing budget. So it's hard. That's part of why people don't know they're there. And the other thing is, because this is Washington, of course, we're subject to the whims of funding. And one of the things that we'd like to happen with this, the DC Gardens campaign, is to bring a little more love and attention to our almost like 450 acres in DC is taken up by this wonderful National Arboretum that has now been closed 3 days a week since Congress cut back their funding in October of 2013 in the sequester. I don't even know what a sequester is, but it has really cut back on visitorship at this wonderful place, especially by school gardens. So we're like rallying to support. So some of our branding will be like, you know, Occupy DC Gardens, and a little bit of an activist thing, you know, rallying to their support. Right, Kathy? Kathy even suggested we have a meetup called Occupy DC Gardens. I like that.
Yeah, it's really disappointing about the U.S. National Arboretum being closed for the bulk of the week. It's not like our plants and flowers bloom only on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you could have some great things that you miss in those 3 or 4 days. And of course, we have lots of tourists coming in from Japan and Europe and all over the world, and they're coming to the gates of the Arboretum and finding them closed. And they have a beautiful bonsai collection that's world renowned, and that's really disappointing when you book a group to come to the city that you weren't able to visit it. So we definitely want to knock those doors back open again.
Right. And I was just talking today with this organization that markets D.C., Maryland, and Virginia to the international visitors. And they're real excited to have garden images because can you imagine how many British tourists might just like to visit some of these fabulous gardens? And then in Asia, there are several countries that where bonsai is very, very popular. So we hope to, especially those audiences that are already excited about gardening, to let them know what we have here.
And I wanted to build on something else that Susan said about how many of our public gardens here are free and totally free to come to, that we're so spoiled with our local museums and public gardens that the few that do charge, we're like shocked that they're actually charging us. But we do need to start a culture where people expect to, if they're free, maybe join the Friends organization or give in some other way to these gardens, that they need support in other ways if they're able to come free several times a year to a garden.
Well, you live in a great zone most of the year. There's always something to see all seasons, isn't there? It's some great landscapes.
Yeah, and even what I consider now, mid-February, the doldrums of gardening, you still got snowdrops and a few things out there, but this is big time for orchids. So got several local orchid organizations are having their plant auctions and shows, and this is also when the Smithsonian and the U.S. Botanic Garden get together and have a 6-week-long orchid exhibition. They alternate locations between the Smithsonian and the U.S. Botanic Garden, which is under Congress. So that's always good to see. I think I went there 2 weeks ago and took about 150 photos in one room.
Wow.
That's
cool.
Back
my
to
one
Bren.
trip to Washington, D.C. a couple years ago, we went at the end of March, and unfortunately we missed all the cherry blossoms. There was daffodils and maybe some snowdrops, so I'm going to have to go back. I was wondering, how many gardens do you have probably that will be on your site? I mean, what number of different gardens are we talking about here?
I think we have 12 what I think of as destination gardens, so major gardens. And then, so those are the ones that are getting the monthly treatment of being fully photographed. And then there's another click on the navigation that says more places to visit. So there are the minor gardens. So this would be like for frequent visitors or people who live here. They already know about these 11 or 12 major gardens, but they can explore more smaller gardens and parks, and also I'm including there landscape-type memorials. So everybody knows about the Vietnam Memorial Wall. That's a very famous landscape. Even more of a landscape is the memorial to Franklin Roosevelt, which was designed by a world-famous landscape architect, and it's right on the tidal basin. It's the favorite of many. It's the favorite monument or memorial of many Washingtonians, especially if they like gardens. So we're including those, and so we're trying to expand them to all kinds of outdoor, plant-related, green kind of places, but with the special focus on about 11 gardens. And they're in D.C. and Maryland and Virginia. We're going as far into Virginia to get to include Mount Vernon.
Oh, wow.
But we're not including, Baltimore has a lot of really great gardens just north of the city, and a lot of people have asked if we're going to include it. But Baltimore is only, an hour up the road. But I hope that Baltimore will have their own, actually. So then we can just link to it, and then all the people who live in the D.C. area, if we want a day trip, we could see, well, what's happening in Baltimore? What do they have? Or maybe another one, 2 hours south of here, down to Richmond. I'm hoping that there'll be one there. So, and there's already a large website called that compiles 31 different gardens in the Philadelphia area. So that's a day trip for us also. So we're kind of, I'd love to see the Mid-Atlantic being covered with all these compilations of these great gardens that you could see all within a day trip.
Very cool. So you mentioned orchids, and we have our Twitter friend, Houseplant Guru. She wants to know, where could she see these photographs?
Right now, I put up the album on my Facebook page, Washington Gardener Magazine. So just go to Facebook and Washington Gardener Magazine. Pretty easy to find, or you can even search under my last name, Jentz, and you should be able to find them pretty easy. And you can see at the same page the albums from previous years' orchid shows, and you could compare those.
Very cool. Okay, so I feel really bad. I haven't been down to the D.C. area since I was a kid. We toured, all the beautiful buildings, and I remember the trees. So what are some other, are there shrubs? Is there any special landscape plants other than the trees that we might find down in the D.C. area? I know there's a whole bunch, but is there something else that really stand out? Your favorite. How about let's name a favorite?
Susan, do you want to answer? I'll answer. One of my favorite flower, bar none, is peony, and that's herbaceous peonies.
Ah.
And they're at Dumbarton Oaks, which is in the Georgetown neighborhood. Dumbarton Oaks has a fabulous cutting garden, which I didn't even know after several visits, because I'd never been at the right time of year in the garden, has a huge hedge of peonies in the cutting garden. And I was just astounded when I went there at the end of May and saw them all abloom at once. So that was a nice surprise for me.
Yeah. There's a lot of southern gardeners I know off Twitter who would love to see those, because, we share a picture of peonies and they're so jealous because they can't grow them, so that's good to know. How about you, Susan? Is there something that you appreciate in the Washington, D.C. gardens?
Well, I certainly appreciate that we can grow just about anything here. So I'm kind of a generalist, I would say, and I like, I rarely take close-ups. I really like to see plants within their garden setting, and in fact, the kinds of photos that we're gathering are more not close-ups, but they give you a sense of place, and you'll see the garden as opposed to individual plants. And this is the kind of photo that Dr. Benfield in Connecticut has found that really does entice people to visit a garden. It's the photos that maybe have the other visitors in them, and the photos that give you a sense of place. So I take a lot of more longer shots, photos when I go. But in terms of what might be my favorite plants, I mean, I've gone through so many fads. You know, I've gone through my daylily phase, and I've gone through my tulip phase and my Rita phase, and now it's more I'm exploring whatever the pollinators like. You know, I'm
Nice.
fickle. I've been around many years. I've gardened for 40 years, and so it's one thing. Well, at the Arboretum they have a whole collection of dwarf conifers. Well, I just fell in love with conifers.
Oh, yeah.
So I can, So I'm kind of promiscuous that way. Any new plant group, I can be very excited about.
Yeah, we're really lucky in the DC area because we're the northernmost area that you can have crepe myrtles and camellias. We're kind of called the camellia belt and the crepe myrtle belt, and we can also do spring blooming bulbs that our southern friends can't do, and we can do lilacs. So we're the southern, I guess we're called the northern southern belt for lilacs. If you go half hour south of here, you're not going to have much success with lilacs and some of the other cold loving shrubs and trees. But the fact that we don't have to pre-chill our tulips can actually stick them in the ground over the wintertime makes me almost grateful for winter. Maybe not quite grateful for this winter, but almost grateful enough that we have at least those few chilly weeks for those plants that are happy with it. And I will say, after last winter's horrible, harsh length, we had one of the most beautiful springs, and I would say our flowering shrubs did better than I've ever seen them in 10 years. So that cold must have done some good for some things.
Nice. I'm curious. I'm a big foodie. I love vegetables in the garden, and I love restaurants that have gardens. Are you seeing that as a trend down in the DC area?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can think of a couple, that either have, I mean, of course, land is very expensive here, but I know one that has a downtown with a little courtyard garden, and there's more and more rooftop gardens. It is a struggle with downtown locations, but there more and more of the gardens of the restaurants are contracting with local farms. So even though they're not growing up, out their own door, it's very, very local.
Sure.
So certainly the local, finding their ingredients locally and supporting local farmers is huge. Wouldn't you say, Kathy?
Yeah, I would say that there's a couple restaurants like Founding Farmers and Equinox that are totally trying to be locally sourced restaurants, and not just for the vegetables, but across the board. And then there is the fact that the farmers markets have sprung up all over DC in the last 10 years, so that if you want to meet your favorite chef, I have a little tip for you, and that's the Thursday evening Pennsylvania Avenue. It's kind of like between 8th and H Street on Penn Avenue near Gallery Place, and it's a 5 to 8 farmers market on Thursday nights during the growing season. And whenever I walk through there, and it's usually before going to the theater or something, I'll see the chefs in their full toques and everything running out to get fresh ingredients and running back to their restaurants a few blocks away. And you have Haleo, and Mike Isabella's restaurant is only 2 blocks away. So you can see not just them, but the chefs, sous chefs, and out there as well. But no other farmers market have I ever been to and seen so many chef's jackets running around and vying for ingredients and trying to grab it first. So
very cool. You gotta get a picture of that.
Yes. Although sometimes I'm like, sometimes they're a little brusque. Let's just say that.
But
they're not looking for photo ops. Yeah.
That market is also close to the White House. And so, the White House garden has gotten a lot of attention in the last 6 years, and I've been there a few times myself. So there will be, they have it open for the public one weekend every spring and one weekend every October.
Did we lose Brenda?
It looks like we did, but she'll probably pop back on.
Okay, we'll see when she pops back on. Yeah. Sorry, Susan.
Yeah, so if you would like, it's a wonderful opportunity to see the White House grounds and the garden, the vegetable garden. They make it very interesting, even for non-gardening visitors, I think. So, but they don't announce it until the last minute. So if you want to get get notified immediately of when the White House grounds are going to be open, the gardens, then people can sign up for our e-blast, and we will be sending word of that out. But it's wonderful to see what Mrs. Obama has done, and it's just it's a wonderful place to stroll in the spring and the fall. So we hope more people are aware of that. When I post pictures of visiting there, people think that I have some special connection, and really it's open to everyone. There's no cost, and you can even show up and when they open and only have to wait a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm always surprised. There's huge crowds when they open up the White House garden for visitors, but it goes pretty quickly. Don't be intimidated by the long lines.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
You'll be so busy looking around at the flowers anyway, so.
No, yeah. And I was going to say another hidden tour that comes up once a year is the U.S. Botanic Garden. Has their greenhouses near Andrews Air Force Base, and they only open those up once a year for visitors to come. I think it's usually like 3 Sundays in a row in early spring. So we'll be announcing those dates, and people need to sign up fast because those slots fill quickly because they can only allow, obviously, so many people in a greenhouse at a time.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I just want to jump backwards just for a moment because Erin Meyer asked a little question here. She clicked through and she said to Susan, what's your favorite new conifer? So maybe we could just go there, and then let's jump forward after that and talk about funding.
Well, I think my favorite conifer might be the Cryptomeria, which is a Japanese cedar. It is it's so soft to the touch. So, and it's just well, that's my favorite. That's my favorite right now. As I say, I'm a little I'm flighty when it comes to plants. It'll be something else. And then about funding. So you're wondering about the funding of our campaign is we're launching an Indiegogo campaign to support it next Monday, March 2nd. So we're looking for money just to fund our this year, which is we're calling our demonstration year. And hopefully then during the course of this year the results of the campaign will attract some more long-term sponsors. So in our case, we're not asking the gardens to pay to be included because, well, it just wouldn't be all-inclusive. They're government, mostly here, they're mostly government agencies. There's no way that we would get total buy-in. So we're not using pay-to-play. We're independently funding it. And it could be a foundation. It could be the city government decides to promote it. It could be the tourism board decides to promote it to give us the funds to keep going. So we'll see. It's really an experiment. But other places I know, like in Philadelphia, their garden promotion campaign is funded completely by the gardens themselves. But that just wouldn't work here.
We had a comment from Teresa Spate, I think that's how you pronounce your last name. And so she said, how would one contribute to this effort financially? And then she had one other question or comment here. Would this be something that could also be embraced by the DC Historic Society, as most of these gardens have been around for quite some time and are part of the woodwork of the city?
Oh, very good point. Well, we'll have to contact them. Yeah, that's a very good point. And then what was the other question?
Oh, so if we wanted to contribute,
of course.
How would we find that?
So as of Monday, March 2nd, our Indiegogo crowdsourcing campaign will be right there on the homepage. We'll embed the campaign right there. And so the campaign will run, I think, 45 days, so throughout all of March and into April. So we'll see. It's a little exciting, you know, this Kickstarter type campaigns. They seem like, oh, just easy money, but they really are a whole lot of work. So we'll be busy.
Well, we'll try to spread the word. What is your target goal for money, and then kind of how will it be funding this the site?
Well, we're looking. Our goal is 25,000, most of which would go to for the all the e-blast, and so just the communications part of it is what it would be funding, and also some web work and some web design and also graphic design. And then, but for the following year, we'd love to raise up to 50. I think we could very well use up to $50,000 very well. So who knows? We're thinking. We don't know what to expect, but we have lots of ideas.
Yeah, and as far as printed materials, that would depend on how much money we could raise. So we could obviously do simple postcards or brochures to give out at events and garden clubs to hand out amongst them. But obviously that would depend on the budget and how much money comes in.
Right.
Go ahead.
Funding source I wanted to mention is that some horticulture societies have expressed an interest. So this might be something that for example, I'm talking to the Connecticut Horticulture Society. So it could be something that various nonprofits like that might be interested in funding. So that's why I think it would be fun to collect information about what's going on all over the country, because there might be a lot of different models from which to choose.
Did you have any recommendations for someone that wanted to start developing a similar directory in their own area? Any thoughts on helpful hints or anything?
Well, go to the website, dcgardens.com, click on About at the top, and there's a whole page there called Other Cities, where we're trying to collect all these hints and tips, and here's the experience, and showing all the different websites. And some of the campaigns also include advertising, so clearly in some cases a lot more money is involved than just digital assets. Yeah. So we'll see. I do hope that people let us know what they've tried, and we can keep adding to that body of knowledge. And there's a garden also being disseminated at this International Garden Tourism Conference, which is going on next month in Toronto. So the word about is getting around that promoting gardens is certainly financially worthwhile for cities.
Yeah, I think absolutely is. I was wondering, maybe before we wrap up for the evening here, let's say it's May or June or whichever is your favorite month. What would be your favorite garden to go to in Washington, D.C.? What are your personal, number one? I know there's probably different things that bring you to different ones, but any top favorite?
Well, for me, if you go to the dcgardens.com website, the photo at the top is of these columns. They're called the Capitol columns. They're at the top of a gorgeous meadow at the National Arboretum, and I was waiting all year for the Amsonia that are there and the asters to finally the asters to bloom, purple asters. I mean, it's a huge meadow that in front of these Capitol columns. And then the most outstanding plant is the Amsonia hubrectii, which in the fall becomes bright orange. And so I took that picture. I remember I posted one just with my iPhone, and people they couldn't believe it. It was just so stunning. So that's my favorite spot, and that's in the late October. What about you, Kathy?
I think my favorite, it's like choosing among your children. I think my favorite would be the Franciscan Monastery, which is adjacent to Catholic University. It's like the next hill over, and it's very special at 3 different times a year, so definitely returning trips. But they always have a huge bulb blooming timing around Easter. So they have tons of beds of different tulips and daffodils color coordinated with the cool season annuals around them. So definitely go for the bulbs in springtime. And then they pull that all out, and out of their one tiny greenhouse in the back of their grounds, they have palm trees that they keep all winter long, and they plant everything out with tropical plants, so caladiums, cannas, the palm trees, and what they're trying to do is make it look like you're visiting the Holy Land. So this monastery is set up with replicas of all the holy sites in the Holy Land, so they want you to think you're coming to the Mediterranean, I guess, but you're in the middle of DC. So, and then of course they have gorgeous fall colors as well in their native garden, and a luminaria show around Christmas. That's always nice to see. Might not be blooming plants at that time, but there's beautiful lights and candle walk. So Franciscan Monastery is also completely open and free to anybody who wants to visit, so that's always nice and welcoming.
Well, that sounds fabulous. Now I know where I need to get to next time I go visit. On them. Let's see, Bren, where can folks find us and our guests, and maybe we can wrap it up.
Well, first of all, I hope everybody visits their website with this project. It is beautiful. I love the wisterias that are on the front page right now, and that is at dcgardens.com. And if you're following us on Google right now, you can click on any one of our faces on the site event, which please do. Click us so we can connect and share more about gardening with you. And you can always follow the hashtag at Garden Chatter to find out what we have coming up. Thank you, girls. This was fun. And Adam, thanks so much.
Yeah,
thank you for hosting.
All right. Well, we'll wrap with that. Thank you.